The second half of the season has got off with a bang. James, what an amazing result for Lewis. 200th Grand Prix start, and he won it, and won it in style. How important, though, was track position this weekend?
Normally you would go to Spa and expect that actually it's a very easy track to overtake, and that's somewhat true. You saw at the restarts, and even at the beginning of the race, Vettel was a fierce adversary right alongside him both times. But the reality is, once everything's working, the tyres are up to temperature, it's actually reasonably difficult to get two cars near similar performance to overtake one another. So track position here, qualifying more specifically, being on pole and being in the lead of the race at the end of lap one is crucial to winning this race.
But if we look here on the pit lane times as well, the pit stop crew doing a fab job of getting Lewis through his pit stop quickly. How important was that?
Again, in that situation, very important. We took a decisive action to stop Lewis first, and as we came in, it is a close race with Sebastian at that point in time. The Ferrari, there is no doubt about it. We tried to shake it all race. It was a very fast car, and without the pit stops coming together properly, we would have ended up more compromised after the stop against Sebastian.
Well, let's look at your tyre allocation, because going into the race there was a lot of talk about how the Ferraris, the Red Bulls, even the Toro Rossos had taken a more aggressive strategy with a lot more ultra softs. Why had you chosen not to take that many and obviously run those softs towards the end of the race?
Spa is, on the calendar, one of the most difficult circuits. It's a very long lap, but not just that. There's a lot of corners that are very aggressive on the rear tyres. And the ultra soft tyre, very fast, especially in qualifying, but did suffer during the course of the race, especially with degradation. And the soft was a huge amount more resilient to that. On our car especially, the soft tyre was working extremely well and was absolutely a faster tyre than the ultra soft. So for our allocation, we biased it towards that harder compound. Other teams went for different risk factors. Ferrari, going into qualifying, had exactly the same amount of tyres we did. Red Bull, on the other hand, didn't do any running on the soft all weekend and really chose to favour the softer compounds for them and commit to a two-stop race. This race ended up being a two-stop, that safety car really being the primary cause behind it. But actually going into it, a lot of teams, including ourselves, were considering whether it was really a one or a two-stop race.
Well, let's look at the safety car, because before we went into the safety car period, the order was obviously Lewis, Sebastian, and then Valtteri. But straight afterwards, Valtteri unfortunately losing that place. What happened there?
The safety car was at what I would call a prime point of the race, a real key point to making a decision. Behind Valtteri, there was no one else behind him, so stopping him was a fairly clear and evident thing to do. More difficult with Lewis, we'll get back to that in a second. The question became, from there to the end of the race, what should we do with tyres? Should we take the soft tyre that absolutely, for our car certainly, but actually for most cars, had less degradation, more robust? But your downside is this, it's just a little bit harder to warm up. If you get it warm, no problems at all. If you can't, you're going to struggle at the restart. With Lewis, we fitted the soft. With Valtteri, we fitted the soft. With Lewis, as you saw, he did an exceptional job defending against Vettel. And from that point onwards, we had no concern. Once we're through that first lap, he managed the gap very efficiently. With where Valtteri was, in traffic, he wasn't able to get the tyres warm. He struggled at the restart. And as you saw, both Kimi and Ricciardo came straight past him. And the reality is we made a mistake. We should have had the ultra soft on that car for Valtteri at that point in time. And that meant that he wasn't able to successfully defend his podium position.
You say you made a mistake. Why didn't you have any more ultra softs available?
We had ultra softs, but they were all used. We'd made a conscious decision this race to absolutely maximise qualifying, which is not something Ferrari did. And actually, it's a very interesting balance. So with both Lewis and Valtteri, we ran twice in qualifying too. That new ultra soft, we used it. The reason why we did that is to maximise our chance of qualifying on pole and ideally first and second. Ferrari didn't. And actually, if you ask Ferrari, did they do the right thing? I suspect that they would have wanted to fight for pole more than they did. Qualifying was a mixed affair. So what happened in qualifying 2 is Ferrari had a very straightforward run, but their first run in qualifying 3 was hampered. Jolyon Palmer had an engine blow up effectively, and that left oil down at the track around turn 12. And that meant the drivers, the Ferrari drivers, never got to experience a flat-out lap since qualifying 1, whereas our guys were prepared. And it did make a difference. It did put us in a slightly better position. The hindrance was we went into the race without new ultra-soft tyres available. And it's a weakness. Come a safety car towards the end of the race like this, you're not going to be able to fit the same tyres they are. We can fit a used ultra-soft, but it's not going to be anywhere near the grip that the new one provides.
James, interesting question. If the Force Indias hadn't come together and we hadn't had a safety car, how do you think the race would have played out?
That is an interesting question. The reality is, both Ferrari and ourselves were going to the race not fully knowing if it was a two-stop or a one-stop. We had a gap at around 1.5, 1.6 seconds relative to Vettel as we went through the race just before that safety car came out, and we were very seriously considering converting to a two-stop. Now there's a few questions on the table. Do we go for a two-stop and accept that we are now not in the lead of the race, but that we should be able to catch back up and overtake? It's a defensive measure to stop Vettel doing it first. Do we take the soft tyre, which for our car was working much, much better? And you can do that with around about 18 laps to go in the race. Or do you take the ultra soft tyre, the used tyre, and really go for a proper risk? And the difference that lay down is obviously the ultra soft would have to been much, much later. So every lap you wait, you're allowing Ferrari the chance to stop. And as we went through, we were evaluating all of those situations, and whichever one we had gone for, it would have still ended up in a dramatic finish, either with Lewis coming through to overtake Vettel hopefully at the end of the race, Vettel held on to his tyres, or Vettel going for a stop just before we did and us having to react to it. And that really was a circumstance that didn't pan out, but that was definitely on the cards as we went through.
Well, thankfully you didn't have to make that decision because the four cylinders did come together and we did get a safety car, and luckily Lewis hung on until the end to take the win. So a great weekend for Lewis and the team, and for Valtteri finishing in 5th. We move now to Italy for Monza. It's going to be a great race. We will see you there and afterwards. Thank you, James.
Brilliant, thank you.